India, a land for only invasions. The NCERT, filled with leftists and the twisted seculars, was more than willing to distort the narrative completely. The agenda-filled history in a subtle and a not-so-subtle manner, gave us a narrative which brainwashed growing generations into believing that we were a country meant for invasions. Our history became a history of invaders, instead of the land and its people. The Islamic invasions, the European invasions, the British rulers, the story of select Indian leaders like Nehru and Gandhi, became the only theme of the textbooks. It was funny that obscure rulers like Iltutmish, Qutbuddin Aibak had full chapters sometimes devoted to them, and the student at the time of finishing school would have no clue about Lachit Borphukan or the Chola rulers of the south. There was a bare minimum touching of the Sikh gurus. The narrative here had a severe distortion too. The invaders became benign people, who were very benevolent towards the people and their religion. The invasions were brutal, the rulers were brutal too. There was the extermination of a vast number of Hindus, and there was large-scale destruction of the temples. The facts were all very well known at the time of independence, but the purpose seemed to not offend the minorities, in the name of secularism. The facts had a complete whitewashing. There was ignoring of the accounts of contemporary historians during the barbaric acts of destruction, loot, and killing, and the texts carried strangely references of 20th century historians, dominating the Indian history narrative. The question never occurred to us during our growing years, and neither was it asked why people needed to invade India. What was so special about the country, which attracted the plunderers from across the world? It was never taught that we were the richest and the most prosperous country in the world. Angus Maddison came much later with clear numbers, who showed that India and China were contributing more than 50% of the world GDP, for 17 centuries from the start of the millennium. UK was contributing 2% of the world GDP, when the East India Company landed in India, and became 18% in a period of 150 years of sheer loot and plunder. India reduced from 30% to 2%. The exact numbers were not known for a long time, but still, the facts were truly clear about the tremendous economic and scientific growth of India, in the pre-invasion period of India. Will Durant, in 1930, in his book The Case for India, strips the colonial rule completely, and starts in the introduction, saying, I came away resolved to study living India, as well as the India with the brilliant past, to learn more of this unique revolution, that fought with suffering accepted but never returned, to read the Gandhi of today, as well as the Buddha of long ago. And the more I read, the more I was filled with astonishment and indignation, at the apparently conscious and deliberate bleeding of India, by England, throughout 150 years. I began to feel that I had come upon the greatest crime in all history. He continues in the next chapter. I wish to speak, in this chapter, with an accustomed partiality and passion. I am poorly qualified to write of India. I have merely crossed it twice between east and west, and once from north to south, and seen hardly a dozen of its cities. And though I have prepared myself with the careful study of 100 volumes, this has all the more convinced me that my knowledge is trifling and fragmentary, in the face of a civilization 5,000 years old, endlessly rich in philosophy, literature, religion and art, and infinitely appealing in its ruined grandeur, and its weaponless struggle for liberty. If I write at all, it is not only because I feel deeply about India, but because life cannot wait till knowledge is complete. This book was very well known at the time of independence, but none of this gets a mention in any of our textbooks. We just grew up being ashamed of our country, its religion, its culture, and its arts. Today, there is a disconnect in the youth with the idea of India. We have sunk into a state where there is no patriotism or nationalism. In fact, the twisted ideology is out to convince that any idea of patriotism is fanatical. If you liked what you saw, consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing. Until next time. See you.